Hello everyone, we are here to talk about the customer requested enhancements as part of 15.9.3. So in this release, we have quite a few of enhancements that came based on direct customer feedback or customer interaction with the product management team. The ones that I will cover in this specific sections are as follows. Ability to update the AccessRight names after renaming a custom investment type or custom object. Enhancements that we've done to our dynamic lookup display in the modern UX. We've made changes to the primary key field size to meet customer requirements. We've added the ability to add ZOG in the task owner, as well as an ability to either enable or disable auto granting instance rights to custom objects, either using ZOG or API. We have introduced relative date shiftings, an Excel-like functionality in the modern UX, made improvements to the saved view within modern UX. We are now introducing the custom TSV in the modern UX. And finally, we also will have the support for the login messages using the SSO flow. There are additional customer requested enhancements, 5 specific ones that I will not cover in this module. However, those will be covered in detail in their respective modules. For example, the ability to synchronize roadmap item name is going to be covered when we talk about the roadmap enhancements. Delete confirmation message when deleting a resource, role, team, or investment from the staffing workspace will be covered as part of the staffing discussion. Project lock indicator in the modern UX will be covered as part of the project management enhancements. Blueprint specific actions will be covered as part of the project management also. And data warehouse performance improvement enhancements is covered as part of the data warehouse enhancements. Why are all these changes important? We've had direct interactions with a lot of our customers. Customers have engaged as part of the product management office hour calls, monthly roadmap reviews, monthly design sessions, and have raised functionality enhancements that would make using of Clarity and adoption of Clarity much better in their organization. These enhancements are then added in the product as direct feedback from these customers. All of these enhancements are direct results based on those customer interactions, and hence we ask more and more of our customers to be involved and work directly with us and help make the product even more expand in their organization. So let's talk about the first enhancement that we'll cover is the auto update of AccessRight name. Customers that change the custom investment types or custom object names will notice that in the prior releases of Clarity that once the name is changed, the AccessRight name still remains to be the same original name that was when that specific object was created. For example, if I create a custom investment type called strategy, my AccessRight will then also be called strategy, and it'll display as strategy across either an instance right or a global right or an OBS right. If in the future, based on the changes that the company goes through, we decided to rename from strategy to business alignment, I can go into the studio and easily rename the object from strategy to business alignment. However, the AccessRight name in the past would continue to say strategy, and this was causing confusion within the administrators because over time, the term strategy would not mean the same to them because it's now renamed as business alignment. So starting 15.9.3, we have the capability to just push the name changes so that the name changes are reflected in OBS rights, instance rights, global rights, and the subobject master object name. The way this is done is by using the new push object captions link that is available in Studio. This push would need to be performed in order for the right name changes to occur. If you do not do that, then the name for the access rights will continue to remain the same as it did in the past. In 15.9.3, we are also expanding or enhancing how the dynamic lookups will behave. The dynamic lookups in the modern UX have been enhanced to now use the Studio Autosuggest settings. This allows the administrator to control what data points are displayed to the end users when the lookup is being used. This also allows the administrator to control which all data points can be filtered when the end user is trying to populate the data. This change will work with the out of the box as well as with the custom dynamic lookups. And this works in the grids, the flyout, and the properties page. The definition of where to control the Autosuggest and the search is within the lookups under the Autosuggest. This is something that is used by the classic, but now in starting 15.9.3, the modern UX will also respect the same Autosuggest settings. In 15.9.3, we are also expanding the length of the primary keys. Customers that have been using Clarity for several years and using functionality where they've been generating a large amount of data, such as timesheets, have encountered an issue where the primary key length has reached its maximum number, and generating any more new key results in the negative number, because for anyone that knows from a database configuration, the attribute type, that once it reaches the maximum integer value, then it'll start with the negative maximum integer value and then start back again. To address this specific issue, what we are doing is we are changing the primary key length type from number 10 to long. This allows us to have an even longer primary key and addresses the case where we do not have to start back from a negative number or even from 0, but we can continue even longer. We now will have the ability to ZOG in the task owner name. This came direct feedback from a lot of our customers that were generating new tasks using ZOGs, but were not able to assign the task owner in the ZOG, as we did not have an option to populate that. So now starting 15.9.3, if you are going to use ZOG to create or update task, you can also update the task owner. This is done by using the new attribute that is introduced in the ZOG, and the sample for it is displayed right here, where you will have to set the value as owner equal followed by the resource ID of your user. And once done so, you would see the changes reflected right here. Several of our customers that use the custom object as a staging area to essentially take the data from external application, stage it in the custom object, and then process that data to be reflected in other parts of Clarity, have reported to us that by creating these staging areas in the custom object results in also creating instance rights for each record that is created in the custom object. This over the period of time results in millions of entries um, in the instance right table, hence having a direct impact to the performance of the application. To address this, we are now introducing a new parameter that can be used in ZOG as well as in the REST API that allows the user to control if the data that they're creating is transactional. That means it's going to be just temporary use to be processed and does not need to have an instance right assigned to it. Then that parameter can be used to set to false. This parameter is called assign instance right equals followed by true or false. If the value is set to true, which is also the default behavior, then in that case, any new records created using ZOG or REST API will have the instance right assigned to it. If you set the value for assign instance rights to false, then we will not create the instance rights for that specific record. This allows us to control the amount of entries created in the instance right. For any data that is created with the assign instance right set to false can still be viewed in the UI, provided the user has either global or OBS rights to view that data. By default, if you do not use this parameter, then the application will continue to behave as it does today. So this is not a required parameter, and the default behavior for this parameter is exactly how it is today, that we will continue to create instance access rights for that specific record that you are creating. We are introducing relative date shifting in the modern UX. This is one of the new and exciting feature which allows us to essentially shift dates in a relative manner. We can shift a date anywhere in the modern UX, whether it's in the grid, in the flyout, or in the properties page, or in the bulk edit. We can shift the date by as simple as editing the date field and typing in plus or minus followed by a number. And then that date for that record is shifted based on the number and plus or minus that I typed. So if I do +5 to move a specific date, then it'll move the date by 5 days. If I type -5, then it'll pull back the date by 5 days. The date shifting will not bypass any business rules. For example, if I have a task where actuals are populated, then I cannot go to the task and type +10 and try to move it by 10 days. The business rules will take over. The process business rules will take over, and it'll prevent me from changing those dates. Date can be shifted using bulk edit. So I can select multiple records, and then I can go into bulk edit and type in the date shifting rule, in this example, +10, and then see those date change applied. And if I am okay with in the preview, I can hit on save, and all those records date will be shifted relatively by 10 days. So in this example, if the original date for each one of these tasks was in May sometime, I shifted by 10 days, then each record will have their date added 10 days to it. So each one will move 10 days based on their original dates. We are also introducing Excel-like drag to populate data. This is something a lot of our customers have asked, that in Excel, they can populate a certain data and then just drag the values down so that the rest of the columns where the values are dragged into, the data is already automatically copied instead of trying to do Control C and Control V. You can use the drag, copy, and paste pretty much in any cell. provided the cell allows you to copy the data into. You can also do number value sequencing. So for example, just like in Excel, if I have two numbers and I try to highlight both and then drag below, it understands that what is the sequencing of those numbers. If there is each time the number is going up by one, then all the following numbers, it will keep adding it by one. If I have the two numbers go up by 100, then it'll keep incrementing it by 100 and populating it. So we do have those number sequencing available. This will work with the drag and drop, will work with any attribute, provided, like I said, the attribute allows copying of the data. You can drag multiple attributes together. So I can select multiple of those and just drag it down, and every record will then populate. So in this example right here, I've selected two values, and then when I drag it down, the values will then be copied in their respective cells below. To use this functionality, you have to hover over the field, and then as soon as you will see a new plus icon displayed on top of where your cursor is, that's when you can start dragging and dropping. And you'll see this more during the demo to understand the difference between selecting a cell or having the cell selected to drag and drop. Dragging to populate the data will only work vertically. So I cannot have it dragged and then go across horizontally to the other cells. That's because the other cells are of different data types, and you should not be copying or cannot copy the data from one to the other. We are also enhancing the saved views in MonUX. This is one of the top asks from a lot of our customers, where the view functionality in the MonUX is getting overpopulated as different users create their own set of views. And if I have several users in my environment, then I could see hundreds of views out there, but I don't want to see all of them. So we need a better way to manage which views appear for every other user in the system. So we have a better way to manage views in MonUX. Users have the ability to control if their view is available to the other users to see or not. Only shared views will appear in other users' view. Only shared views can be flagged as favored by other users. Administrators can delete other users' view, but cannot change the share settings. Views marked as default will automatically be flagged as shared, and the ability to see when the user has last modified that specific view. So just going through a little bit on the screens, you can see that when I am saving a view, there is a new option called Shared with Everyone. This is the flag that is going to be available that controls if this view that I am saving is available to all the others in my organization. If I go into Manage Views, that's where now I can see all the views that I have available that I've created. I can flag them for favorite, and I can control if that specific view should be shared with others or not. I also have the option for setting a default, provided I have that access right, and any view that is checked as default is automatically flagged as shared. I can also see the modified date when that specific view was last modified. This allows me to see which views might be very old and might no longer be relevant, and I could delete it if I wanted to. I have the option to mark others' view as favorite, provided others have that view shared with everyone. And finally, if I have enough access right, then I can delete other users' view from the system. Again, this would be an administrative functionality to delete other users' view. We are also now introducing custom TSVs in modern UX. Introducing this ability in the modern UX, this is something that the customers have been asking for a while. Customers have created custom TSV in the classic UI and have been using it for various reasons. However, they could not see that custom TSV in the modern UX. We now have the option to specify API attribute key for these custom TSV. And once defined, those custom TSVs are available in the modern UX. Customers can enable this for either existing or their newly created TSVs. We do support all three types, the number, money, and percentage custom TSVs in the modern UX. The custom TSV can be included in the grid using these settings, just like any other attributes. Option to see the data as a grand total or sum of period, just like our out-of-the-box TSV. We have the ability to populate TSV data to evenly spread it across either using sum of period or grand total. Custom TSV can be added to all objects except to do, and we've fixed the sum of total to work even if the column in the total is not in the selected period. And we'll see more details for this during the demo. Finally, the enhancement that we've made is in 15.9.2, we had introduced the new functionality called login messages. This login messages allowed administrators to display messages to their end users when they logged into Clarity. However, in 15.9.2, this functionality only worked if the users were using basic authentication and did not work with SSO flow. However, starting 15.9.2, we have addressed that, and now the login messages will work with basic authentication login, SSO authentication logging, or navigating from a classic UI to modern UX. So all of those are going to be addressed in 15.9.3. So with that, let's go in and see a lot of these customer requested enhancements that we are introducing or providing in 15.9.3. So here I am in Clarity 15.9.3. The first I'm going to cover is the AccessRight changes. For that, I'm going to go into the administrative section in Classic UI. I have a object in a custom object that I've created that today is called as CAM. This is a custom object that was created, and all the access rights for this, if I was to go into my license information, I can see all the access rights are assigned as CAM in the system. So every user would have CAM something assigned to them. If I now decide to rename this to something else based on whatever organizational changes, let's say I am going to call this as metrics as the new name for it. I would go ahead and save this change. And once the change is saved, I have the option to push these changes to my access rights. So first, I'm not going to do anything. So I've just made the change. I've saved it. If I go back to my license and I search for CAM, I would see all the access rights are still called CAM. This is the existing behavior in 15.9.2 and prior, that the access rights continue to be the same, even though the object is now called metrics. If I go back here, I'm going to go into the same object, and I'm now going to push those changes. This will now go ahead and update all my access rights as well as any sub-objects where metrics is defined as the parent. All of those changes will then be reflected. So if I'm going to go back to my license, If I filter again using for CAM, I'll notice there are none available. So the AccessRight as CAM are gone. I'm going to now search for metrics. And now all the AccessRights have the name metrics listed to it. So all the AccessRight name changes have taken place. The next I'm going to show is the lookup enhancements. So we discussed that the lookups that are the dynamic lookups that are created in Clarity, whatever the option we have for to display or search will now be respected in the modern UX. So first I'm going to go into administration. I am within the lookups and I have a predefined lookup called Strategy and Business Objective Manager. This is a dynamic lookup, so this change is only for dynamic lookups. In here, we don't need to see the query, but the Autosuggest section is the one where we are going to see where it controls which all columns should be displayed to the users when they are looking at it in the modern UX, as well as which all columns can be used for search. Right, so this is something we used in the classic. The same thing is going to work in the modern UX. So for now, I have every column except for resource ID available. It's going to be displayed and I can search for any one of these. So let's look at this in action. So let's go into the app. I'm going to go into my project grid in this case. And I have the strategic sponsor as a column. So in my project, the attribute strategic sponsor is using the same lookup that I had defined in the classic. So for here, the first thing we'll notice is that the minute I try to edit, I can see all the same columns as I had configured, which is the name, this is the object, the status, and so on. So all of this information, as I have defined in my lookup itself. Manager, the investment name, manager ID, and so on. So each one of those is defined right here. And that's exactly what I'm seeing. I can also filter for any one of those. So let's just say I want to filter for only the object of strategy. So I type in strategy right here, and you can see only the strategies sponsors are listed. So these are all 4 sponsors that I can pick for based on the strategy. Or I can search for a specific user and gives me just that specific one. Or I can search for all the high and very high strategies, and then only those will appear. So I have much more flexibility as to what I can search for. But let's go ahead and look at if I can change this to say, well, I do not want to allow the users to search for priority or object. So I'm going to go ahead and take this out from my Autosuggest and my search keys. So now my users can only search based on their name, investment, or the IDs. Let's save that. And now let's go back. All the same columns are still there because I did not change the column layout or added any column. However, now if I try to search for strategy, gets no results because I am not allowing them to search based on the object names, or same with the status. If I search for any of those highs, nothing will appear because I took those out. So I'm able to totally control how the users can search or not search. Next, let's look at the enhancement made to the ZOG to be able to ZOG in the task owner. So to do that, let's first go see one of the projects. In this case, I'm going to look at the mobile payment system. and I have various tasks created in here, but the very first one is the planning phase, and the task owner is Paul Martin. I would want to change this to a different task owner using ZOG. So for that, let's look at my ZOG. So this is a sample ZOG. Of course, in this case, I have kept my ZOG to be very small intentionally. You can, of course, have any other information that you wanted to add when you're trying to ZOG in. Here is the new parameter that you can use to ZOG in the task owner. So if you remember, I had Paul Martin as the planning phase, Paul Martin. I'm going to change from Paul Martin to Paul Burks. Paul Burks, this in here is the resource ID of my specific user. So let's go ahead and run the ZOG. Again, I'm not going to show how to run the ZOG. In this case, I've just kept it simple. The ZOG is running, and you can see the result just pop up on the screen. Everything is successful. One record was updated. If I go back here and do my quick refresh and come back, I should see that the task owner is now Paul Burks. So I can make changes, either update or populate the task owner using Project ZOG. The next enhancement is the ability to control for a custom object if I want to assign instance rights or not. To do that, let's first go into my custom objects, and I have a custom object defined for supply list. I've intentionally kept it small, but I have only 2 entries in here. I have a supply for mattresses and I have supply for beds. 2 entries created in this. I could either do this using ZOG, or in this example, let's look at the REST API. It's the same exact parameter, but I'm going to use the REST API to create new records in here. I will create 2 new records, one of them with access rights and one of them without access rights. So to do that, let's go here. I am using Postman just for this sample, but you can use any other way to perform your REST API creation. In my the body for the REST API write syntax, again, I'm doing a post to my custom object. I've added the following as the additional information that needs to be passed when running the API. Here is my new parameter, which is the assign instance rights. The default value is true, so I'm going to create one called patient gowns as with the rights. I'm intentionally going to have this name in here so that when we look at it in the UI, we should see the ones that where instance rights are created and not see the one where instance rights should not be created. So here is the ZOG. Here is the API. I'm going to run this. I see that record is created. Let's create another one where I do not want to have the instance rights assigned to it. So let's do that. Let's give it a different name called RX Medicines. No rights for this one, and I'm going to give a new code for it. And let's go ahead and run this one too. All right, so I've created 2 records. Oh, and I forgot to change the right. So let's create a third one. Let's set this value to false because that is when no rights should be assigned. So that's the one that we want. I'm going to run this again. Now, if I go back into Clarity, if I refresh this, just for our keep it simple. Okay. So I have the two records created for me, the patient gowns with rights and the RX medicines, no rights. I can see this in the UX because I have global right as this user. However, I'm now going to go in and see in the classic studio for the specific user that the instance right. So I have assigned Cheryl Amos as the owner for this. If I go ahead and look at the instance rights, so here you can see the one with rights is displayed and the one without rights is not there. So this way I'm able to control that the users, that when an instance record is created, whether an instance right should be assigned or not. Again, this addresses a major performance issue that customers had requested. Next, let's go ahead and look at the date shifting functionality. So for that, I'm going to go into our Modern UX. I'm going to go into our project, a specific project in this case, where I can modify the dates. So I'm going to look at the email SAN storage implementation project. And here, let's look at all the tasks that are predefined. If I want to move a specific task, so let's say I want to move the initiating process complete by 2 days. Something got delayed. I want to move this by 2 days. I can, of course, go in and select 2 days later, or I can now just edit that date. I can type plus and type 2 so that this is moved by 2 days. So you notice it went from Feb 27 to Feb 29. So everything, this task got shifted by 2 days. The same thing can also be done by going into my flyout. I can type in another 5 days, tab out, and notice it got shifted by 5 more days. So this is just one simple, but the true use of this comes in where in this example, I have this project, as you can see, was started last year. It started in 2020. There were some actuals against it, but then the project kind of went on hold. There was no more work done on it. Come this year, we are going to restart this, and I want all the dates to be shifted to this year because now we are ready. Of course, some work was already done, so I should not be able to change the dates for the work that was already done, but all the future tasks should be able to move forward. I can now do that using the bulk edit. And it's as simple as just select all, edit. You can see all the tasks and all the dates. I can see my actuals. So up to the defined scope, the work is already done, but starting the initiation phase and below, all the dates should be able to shift to this year, 2020. It should move to 2021. And I can do that by, let's just say I'm going to move it by 400 days. I'm going to move it all to this year and start a little bit late. As soon as I do that, notice all the dates are now changed. Even for the ones that have actuals in the preview, the dates are displayed that it's going to change. And for the non-actual ones, the dates are also reflected. So in the preview, we do show all the dates. However, the minute you click on save, we try to apply those changes. The ones where there is a business rule saying that there is actual and you should not be able to change the date, those task dates will not be impacted. The others will automatically get pushed. So as it's done, you can see that the ones where they were actuals, the dates still remain as 2020. However, the ones without any actuals, the date did get moved to 2021. So with this, I can do an entire shifting, whether I do it individual or I can do in bulk. I can do this in the grid layout, in the flyout, as well as I can do this in the properties. So in this, I can just go in right here and I can try to then change the dates to say, well, I'm going to push the end date by another 10 days. And the date will then get shifted by another 10 days. Next, let's look at the Excel-like drag to populate the data. To do that, I'm going to go into the task again. And in here, I can see that I have moved all the dates, but I have not populated the task owner. To do that, it's now as simple as just select the values before. I can hover over and you can see that the minute I came to the bottom right of my cell where there is this small square, as soon as I hover over that, the icon, my mouse changes from a regular, in my case a pen, in your case could be a pointer, to the plus symbol. That means now I can just select and drag it down and Paul Martin is automatically populated for all the values below. So I've just easily populated the Paul Martin. I can do this for other cells. This is just as simple as that. This is a lot more powerful when you're doing number values to populate cost during your cost plan population. I can also do this for multiple cells. So I'm just going to go back out. In my project grid, I will see that I have custom text fields where I can easily select multiple of those and I can populate the data. So in this case, I have 3 text fields. I can select them horizontally, hover over to the last one and just drag it down. And now I'm easily populating this for multiple cells at the same time. Okay. And lastly, I'm going to go into my roadmap. And here I'm going to show how the number sequencing can work. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead into my mobile plan roadmap, where I have all my investments populated. I have sorted my investments based on different combinations of informations, and I've have it all set. But I have not populated the ranking because in case if any of the sorting order changes, I want to make sure that I can always come back to say, well, what was my ranking order? In the past, the way I would do it is I would then go into my rank and I'll say 1 and then 2 and then keep going 3, 4. In this case, I would have to type. In my example, I only have 10, so it's not too hard. However, if I had hundreds of these investments, I didn't want to go type, double click on each cell and then keep typing the number. Now I can use the Excel-like functionality where I can select the 2 of these cells. It knows that these are numbers and it knows that they're incrementing by 1. So I can again hover over the bottom right of my selected cells. I see the plus icon. I'm going to drag and drop all the way down and notice it recognized it increments and it populated the rest based on the same formula. So it populated all the way 1 to 25 hundreds. I now set up the ranking within seconds for my roadmap investments. Next, let's talk about the enhancements that is made to the saved views. So in here, I'm logged in as an administrator, and I have pretty much defined several views for myself. So I would like to see my project grid layout in different ways. And in that case, I've created several views. There's quite a few of my favorites. I also see some of the other people's views, so quite a few. Of course, if there were other users, I would be seeing all of theirs, and I could potentially have hundreds of views listed right here. Now, I can easily manage if all of these views should also be displayed to the other users in the system or not. To do that, I can go into the Manage, and for my Manage view, you would notice that under the Created By, along with all the view names, now we have a new column called Shared. So we used to have favorites that I could favorite my own created view. Now I can also control which of my views should be shared with others and which ones are default. If I set any one of the view as default, they're automatically also set for shared. If I uncheck it, then the shared still remains till I go ahead and uncheck that. I can see the views created by others. So I see that Tim has created one view and I've marked it as favorite. I do not have the option to share or unshare. However, based on my access, right, I have the option to delete Tim's view if I wanted to. Let's see this in action. So we have all of these views for me. I can see all of them right here. But let's go ahead and look at Tim. Does Tim also see all of these, given that they're not shared? So I'm going to go in. I'm going to log in as Tim. I'm going to go into the project grid layout. And in here, notice his views is so much smaller. It's much cleaner. I can only see as Tim the default view, which is shared with everybody, and the views that Tim has created. I go into the Manage as Tim. Tim only has two, the ones that he's created, and only one out of the two that has been shared as with others. Next, let's look at custom TSV in the modern UX. To do that, first let's look at the configuration for custom TSVs. To do that, I'm going to go into the Studio Objects. And in my case, I have created a studio object called supplier. It's a custom investment type. And in here, I have created two custom TSVs. One called payment. This custom TSV is of type money, and I have the option to populate the attribute ID for it. And the other one is called invoice, which is also of type money. Again, I have the option to create any TSV, whether money, number, or text, and I can enable it for to be available in modern UX. In my example, I have a custom investment types for my suppliers. I want to track the contract value. I want to track how does that contract value break down in terms of the invoice I will get from my suppliers. And then I want to see that when I make payments out to the suppliers, how much payments are going out on a quarterly basis. So let's see that in action now, which is using this custom TSV. I am going to go into my modern UX. I'm going to go into the custom investment types for my suppliers. To keep it simple, I only have a few suppliers. And the first thing you'll notice in my pre-configured view, I have my two new custom TSVs, the invoice and payment. I have selected or the option to show its grand totals. And if I go into my settings, that's where I can see that for the per period metrics, I want to see the per period for both payments and invoice. I want to see it by month, and my period that's in my view is for January of 2021 to December of 2021. I also want to see the grand totals rather than the sum of periods by default. Now to look at some of these, I have different ones. One of them is Broadcom, that I have a contract for $5 million, and the other one is just the medical health that I have a contract for $8 million. So the first, let's look at that for each one of these data that is available to me. I also have the option to populate the grand total and have the numbers automatically spread across either the entire time frame for my specific record or only for the per period that is getting displayed. That spreading is controlled based on the totals here. So in this case, right now I have set the total set to grand totals. I have all the values set up, but let's say that my contract for medical health, right now it is 8 million. We did some adjustments and we found out that, well, we actually had a contract only for 5 million. So I want to just go ahead and update that to 5 million. The minute I do that, you notice that really quickly that the numbers changed for each month. And I intentionally set it to 5 million so you can see that it changed and it matches exactly the 5 million record that was there before. So it's spread across all the duration, which is from the 2020 January all the way to the 2022 December. So it updated the value throughout the entire grand total. Now, for Broadcom, I see that I have made payments for the month of 2021 January all the way to the June timeframe. I have not made any payments starting July. So I'm going to make the payments for the next 3 months. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and say the payments are going to be made for 2021 July to just the next 3 months. September. And I'm going to set it to be sum of periods because I only want to work with that period. No payments are done for Broadcom for that. 0 payments. However, my bill should be about close to 419,000. That is the invoice I got. I'm going to go ahead and make that exact amount payment. And notice the minute I populated that, I see the values updated for those 3 months under payments exactly. So the invoice I got, I made that payment and I easily was able to manage by doing it by the totals. There were some adjustments. Let's say in July, I maybe did not make that exact payment. I only made it 140,000 payments. So I can also do that by editing the individual cells. When I do that, I can see my totals for that sum of period get updated. In this, because I was only working with the 3 months and my setting was sum of period, the spreading is only happening for that sum of period and the total is only displayed for that sum of period. If I go back and change it to the grand total, I will see that all the future dates, which is, and let's also change this to December. So I can see that till the end of this year, none of the payments are made, and that is still all zeros because I was working with the sum of period and my limited time. So that shows that we have now custom TSVs available in the modern UX that can be used by our customers. You can use either existing or brand new custom TSVs. This concludes the section about the enhancements that we've made.